Welcome to the Workology podcast, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, gain powerful insights, resources, and perspectives on the industries of human resources and recruiting. Join your host, Jessica Miller-Merrill, chief blogger of bloggingforjobs.com, for an in-depth and no-holds-barred look into the future of our most powerful business asset, the employee. And now, welcome your host, Jessica, with this podcast episode of Workology.
Welcome to the Workology podcast. Today we are tackling the topic, a complicated topic, full of lots of twists and turns that you might have heard about in the news. We're talking about the topic of compliance for company benefit programs and administration. It's a topic of growing importance due to the new reporting requirements under the Affordable Care Act and several benefit administrative companies who've recently come into question about reporting, licensing, and other compliance issues. So today, as I mentioned, we're talking all about compliance of employee benefit programs and benefit administration. And so I thought I'd just go straight to the source and talk with one of my favorite folks in the benefits and compliance space, and it's Justin Roberts with Decisely. Justin is the EVP of Operations and Strategy with Decisely, and he has been in the benefits business first as a human resource practitioner and now as in his role as the EVP. Welcome to the podcast, Justin.
Well, thank you, Jessica, and appreciate the kind words. I'm excited to be part of this.
Is there anything that you wanted to add to the introduction or point out that's new and exciting going on with you and Decisely, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. There's been a lot of exciting things that have happened just recently with Decisely. Just to paint a little color of our background, I co-founded Bay Point Benefits with Brian Hassan about 10 years ago. And just recently, we've rebranded and changed the name of our company to Decisely. The real reason for that was really to represent more of a national footprint, really to have the opportunity to work and expose our brand at a larger scale.
Awesome. Well, kind of walk us through and talk with us more about what Decisely does in terms of the services that they offer when it comes to benefits and benefits administration.
Absolutely. So let me just kind of start with why the name change, or really what the name embodies. As we are working specifically in the benefit space with our clients, we are realizing that so much of our work is really focused around helping our clients and their employees navigate and make life's most important decisions. And that's really where the name Decisely was born. And so, really, if you look at our business and the service offerings that we have, there's kind of three core competencies that we work in. First would be a trusted benefits advisor. The second one is helping our clients with their benefits administration. And the third piece would be overall compliance for our clients. And so that's really the core service offerings that we have. I will say, as far as the advising, there's two specific roles in which we work, both on the healthcare, employee benefits, health and welfare side, and then also the business insurance, commercial, workers' comp, liability, things along those lines.
Can you talk us through some ways that benefits brokers and administrators support employers and benefits in a little bit more detail?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think in order to stay organized on this, I think as we look at it, there are really four key areas that a broker would really support their clients. I'll list them out and then we can kind of dive into them a little bit deeper. But the first one is administration. The second one is negotiating rates with the carrier. The third one would be communication to employees and staff about the benefits. And then the fourth one would be the compliance piece of the business. Should I kind of hop up back and explain more about the administration and what brokers and the role that they're playing with their clients are?
Yeah, I would love to hear it. I mean, I've been through and worked with a broker myself, but it's been a little while. And given all the changes with the ACA and then just this added, layers of reporting and compliance that we have, I'd love to hear more about, where you guys focus and kind of your philosophies.
Absolutely. So in today's world, I mean, when you look at all the touch points that a director or a manager or HR practitioner would have, There's so many tools and resources out there, and I think that a really good broker is going to be well experienced and have a breadth of knowledge when it comes to the overall administration of the plan and the policy. We're trying and desperately try every day to remove that administrative burden from our client's desk. And so administration is a big piece of this puzzle to solve for our clients, because we feel if you can move that kind of tactical, heads down, paper pushing or kind of older, clunkier systems, you can really build the relationship on strategic planning when it comes to selecting the benefits. And that kind of takes me to the next piece, the rate negotiations. I think, a lot of times the consumer or our clients have been wired to think that when a broker takes a policy out to shop rates with the carrier, spreadsheeting those rates is really, the one and done. If they've done that, then their job is completed. What we really do at Precisely to kind of differentiate that spreadsheeting experience is really doing a much deeper dive into the employee population. So if you look at the complexities of the carriers, the networks, and the changes, rate negotiation with the carriers is I think, one of the most important pieces of a broker's role. It's really, connected to the employer's second largest reoccurring cost. And so, understanding how that works, understanding how to navigate the complexities of the networks is absolutely critical for a broker to understand and be well versed in. But then once you select a plan and figure out which plan you want to go with, the communication piece is really unique and interesting, because gone are the days of the one-time a year open enrollment periods where a broker comes into a room and shows a 10-point deck on deductibles and coinsurance. I think successful brokerage firms really look at communication as being year-round, using a multi-pronged approach, whether it's web-based, in-person, lunch and learns, or even tying communications into things along the lines of gamification, really getting employee engagement and getting them excited about their benefits. And then the last and final piece, the compliance. This is, as you mentioned earlier on in the dialogue, is that insurance is complex, and there are agencies that do a great job at articulating a compliance strategy, and there's ones that kind of make that a second or third tier offering. But in today's world, with the ACA and the complexities there, compliance is just a huge part of what your overall offering is to our client base.
Justin, let's talk a little bit more about compliance and licensing and why that is so important, and why HR practitioners should be asking their brokers these kind of questions.
That's a great question, Jessica. I think, for today's conversation, let's kind of break both of them out, because I think they uniquely have different attributes within each topic. So let's tackle compliance first. If you've been reading or keeping up to date on the insurance industry, there was I think a very insightful quote that has been kind of floating around the industry, and it states, compliance is like oxygen. Without it, you will die. And I say that, tongue in cheek, but, really the broker value proposition, compliance has to be at the heart of the product offering. Whether it's internal, COBRA administration, Section 125 plans, all of those, or more external, that have to deal with ACA pre-existing conditions. And so compliance is now more robust than it's ever been before. I always recommend to my clients, whether they're looking for a broker or have a broker that they've worked with for years, I think there needs to be a quarterly compliance strategy set forth. And you can look at things like, setting together a compliance checklist, ensuring that you're both on the same page with compliance notifications. We have a compliance calendar that we sit down with our clients and discuss. And then we also share and explain, what those compliance documents mean. And so I think when you think of compliance, it's not a kind of set it and forget it experience. It's an ongoing conversation with their clients and their employees to ensure that everybody understands the impacts, not only on the employee level, but from the carrier and network level as well. The second piece, I would talk a little bit about licensing, because I know that was also a part of your question. And with licensing, we've always taken the stance here at Decisely to look at licensing as an essential piece of employment. We think, with healthcare and the complexities, but also too, we're touching and working with our clients in a really unique and meaningful way. Again, we're helping them essentially navigate and understand and make decisions for life's most important decisions. And we believe that, in order for us to set a very high standard, both internally within our company and then externally for our clients, that every person here at Decisely is required to be licensed. Along with, we organize our licensing department to make sure that we not only, our sales reps are licensed, but also to our account staff is licensed. Whether they're quoting plans at renewal, whether they're assisting with a claims issue, licensing is essential when it comes to making sure that you're on top of all the regulatory changes. And also too, I would say it holds the entire company at a higher standard, because licensing is 52-hour coursework to ensure that you're licensed within the state that you transact business in.
What are some questions human resources and business leaders can ask, or that you recommend that they consider asking as they're selecting a new benefits administrator, or maybe just checking up on their current one?
I love this question. I think it's great because, insurance brokers earn a monthly commission to manage the benefits program. And, it's important that any vendor, whether it's benefits or the person selling the copy paper to your printing machine, rises above to ensure that they're earning the commission each and every single month. I think consumers forget how easy it is to transition brokers. Simply with a one piece of paper, you can move brokers without increasing costs or disrupting the plan. And why I say this is because I think it leads directly into what I would consider 6 key areas that a human resource director would want to be asking their current broker or potentially taking it out to market and looking for another broker to potentially work with. And so let me list those 6 that I think are great questions, and then I'll dive back into them. The first one is, what is your client profile and what industries do you work in? The second, what is your unique way of controlling healthcare costs? The third is, what is your approach to employee communication? The fourth is, what is your relationship with the carrier? The fifth is, how do you handle compliance? And then the last one, number 6, is, how do you measure and set up technology for your clients? And so those are the 6 that I think are very important to ask. Is there one that you would want me to dive into in a little more detail?
Maybe let's talk about the unique way of controlling healthcare costs, because I think that would be something that I would be interested in as an employer that might differentiate from broker to broker.
Absolutely. So I keep on going back to the second largest reoccurring cost being your insurance outside of the payroll dollar. And why I think working with an advisor that understands how to control cost, it's an essential part of what we do and the services that we offer. But let me put some color around that as well. When it comes to cutting healthcare costs, step number 1 of doing that effectively is understanding the risk profile. When you look at the census, it's not necessarily let me market this out and see who comes back with the best rates. But we believe at Decisely that if you create a risk profile around a group, you can look at areas where maybe you're over-insuring on the medical plan, where you can drive down costs and provide options where there's higher levels of consumerism, whether that's implementing a high deductible plan with an HSA, and taking those savings and then putting it into maybe a fully paid life insurance or a disability policy or a life insurance policy. And so what I think brokers are challenged with now is, gone are the days of getting that 20% increase on your renewal and then just shopping it and moving to the carrier that's going to offer the best rates the next year. And so by creating that risk profile, we can really move the needle, right or left, to basically say, hey, based off of your group and the population, we really believe that by shifting, these plan designs here or there, that we can control those costs. A quick example would be is If we can save by being smarter about how we set up the medical insurance, we might find that, more than 50% of the group travels farther than 25 miles from the office. Well, that's a great way to implement a very low-cost disability policy, an accident policy, things along those lines. And so by doing that risk profile, you're going to get a much better insights to really what the employee needs are so that you control the costs around really meaningful benefit packages that align with employees' needs across a diverse group of individuals.
I like that by providing a lot of asking the right questions and getting to know employees, the company, kind of where they stand, you're able to really customize a plan that is really unique to them, and then hopefully adding some additional benefits that maybe they hadn't even considered, and maybe save some money at the same time.
That's exactly it.
Well, let's take a little bit of a reset here. This is Jessica Miller-Merrill, and you're listening to the Workology podcast powered by Blogging for Jobs. Today, we're talking about navigating the tangled web of benefits administration and compliance. You know what I'm talking about. You can connect with Justin Roberts at the new Decisely website. It's decisely.com, decisely.com. All right, let's get back to the business of benefits here. At the beginning of the podcast, I mentioned the Affordable Care Act, or the ACA, and some of the new reporting requirements. Can you maybe give us a little bit of a brief overview?
Yeah, absolutely. As you well know, and I'm sure all the people listening to this podcast, that is a very big question and often can, like a Planko board, move in a lot of different directions. But what we always like to say with our clients is compliance and ACA reporting all starts with a year-round plan. There's going to be a lot of changes that are going to be coming up here in the next couple months, and then even with the reclassification of what is considered small group in the Affordable Care Act. And I actually, if you don't mind, would like to kind of dive deeper in the classification of the Affordable Care Act of employee size, what's considered small group, which used to be 2 to 50, and now is moving from 1 to 100. And why I think this is very important is for those people who have been typically used to, groups 50 and above, have been used to composite rating. And what I mean by composite rates is the carriers will release 4 rates, employee only, employee spouse, employee child, and employee family. And if you look at all of those groups that have 50 plus employers, they were typically on some kind of ben admin platform, whether it's a large, well-known name like an ADP or a Benetrack, or even one of the small regional HRIS systems. Well, now per the Affordable Care Act, that definition has changed. And so what the impacts will now be is that all those employers that had composite rating, starting this year, January 1 of 2016, all the clients moving in their renewal from now until January of 2017, if they're between 50 and 100 employees, will now have to move to age-banded rates. And as you can imagine, and I'm sure the HR practitioners listening, you kind of tend to cringe when you hear that, wow, I'm going from this perfectly 4-tiered rating system now to each individual person has their own unique rate based off of their age, gender, zip code, and dependent status. And the reason I think that's really important is for those groups that are impacted by this, they're going to be required to really get out ahead of not only the rate notification, but a lot of times their ben admin platform will no longer support these age-banded rates. So it's a huge population that's going to be impacted by this. We at Decisely have been very proactive on building our platform within the age-banded rate model, which is going to help significantly with those that are impacted by this upcoming change.
That sounds like an employee communication nightmare.
It is. Think of every new hire that says, I want to know what my rate is going to be to add myself and my family. Well, instead of saying I can go to a 4-tier rate system and tell you, now they have to ask for every person's age, gender, zip code, and what have you. So as you can imagine, the HR role is only going to be more complex and add a significant amount of admin work, which is why, again, try to get out ahead of it, find a vendor and a platform that's already pre-wired to help with this age-banded rate change.
Not to mention COBRA around the age-banded rate as well.
That's it.
Wow. My head is spinning. So let's move on from the ACA. I said before we started this podcast that I thought we could spend like years just talking about all the changes and different nuances and things up and coming with the Affordable Care Act. But this just gives you a taste of some of the more interesting and maybe not necessarily maybe communicated changes that are happening or going to be happening with the ACA. So we're going to move on to the next question here. And I wanted to talk about common challenges. So let's say that, I'm a HR VP at an organization, or maybe I'm stepping into a new role. Can you walk us through some common challenges employers face with regard to benefit programs?
Yeah, there's several. But I think walking into a program, I think first and foremost is doing an inventory and a checklist of what's in place today. Oftentimes, we go back to the days where, again, brokers would kind of set it and forget it. And so I think, as a new HR practitioner getting into a new role, is really doing that inventory of what's in place today. Do I feel like the benefits are tailored to each and every unique employee demographic that we have on staff? And then again, I would have that really important conversation with their benefits advisor, and maybe loop in those 6 questions that I had mentioned above to really get an understanding of what's the strategy here, whether it's a fully insured plan and trying to find ways to slice and dice costs, or whether you're on a self-funded plan and trying to curb utilization to ensure that those are in a way that work favorably for the company renewal after renewal. The real point being is that once you've kind of done your inventory, met with your broker, this is, I think, where the exciting work starts, and that's making this meaningful for staff. It's so important that employees aren't necessarily just looking at a total comp statement once a year, or that, again, they're at a yearly open enrollment meeting. There are a lot of things out there with respect to wellness and EAP programs that now touch employees' lives in such a different and unique way that when you kick off the employee communication, this is the fun part, I think, of HR, is that when you can make that meaningful connection to, such a large reoccurring cost, but truly a real investment in staff.
I think that oftentimes employees don't really understand everything that is included with a benefits package, or let alone, like you're saying, they're looking at their total reward statement once a year, and it isn't really seeking in like all the different options that are being provided for that employee 365 days a year.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's, there's a lot of studies, MetLife study, Kaiser Family Foundation studies that, really indicate that employees still have challenges reading their explanation of benefits and deductibles and coinsurance. And again, I think, that is, if we want to close the gap, because this is an employer investment, if we want to close that gap and make this meaningful, the communication piece of it, and each company is going to be different, but the communication pieces of it is year round are absolutely critical to ensure that this is a successful plan.
I agree. Well, Justin, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Where can people go to learn more about you and Decisely?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for asking. I would suggest going to decisely.com, and that's DECISELY, and click on the About Us section, and you can read about myself and our leadership team. I can also be found on LinkedIn, and most importantly, I just appreciate the opportunity if anybody feels like reaching out, whether they stick with their current broker or even entertain looking at a firm like ours. We're here to help and support, and most importantly, help you and your employees navigate, their most important decisions in life.
And that's why I wanted to have you on the podcast, because I love those philosophies and what you guys are doing, and really just trying to help educate not just the clients and the employees, but really the entire industry and the HR community. So thank you for taking the time to come and talk to me today.
It was my pleasure. Thank you.
Well, and I want to thank you all listening in for joining the Workology podcast today, hosted by me, Jessica Miller Merrill, where we discuss the science and art of the workplace, HR, and recruitment. Until next time, you can visit bloggingforjobs.com to listen to all our previous Workology podcast episodes.
Production services for the Workology podcast with Jessica Miller Merrill provided by Total Picture.